We do have some serious news to talk about this morning. The crisis along the Russia-Ukraine border intensifying this morning. The U.S. State Department reportedly in the process of making plans to send some diplomats and their families home from Ukraine.
And the U.S. claiming Russia is planning to invade eastern Ukraine with 100,000 Russian forces already near the border there. Russia denies it plans to attack. And some Ukrainians on the ground believe Moscow is bluffing.
The latest diplomacy session in Geneva, Switzerland, between Secretary of State Blinken and his Russian counterpart reaching no breakthroughs, even as a shipment of U.S. military aid arrives in Ukraine. So let's get the latest this morning from ABC's Patrick Reevell, who's on the ground in the Ukrainian capital. Patrick, good morning to you.
Good morning, Janae. Yes, after positive signs in Geneva on Friday, tensions again ticking up around Ukraine. The US planning to pull out some embassy staff over security fears, and British officials claiming to have uncovered a Russian plot to install a pro-Moscow government here.
This morning, Biden administration sources confirming the US State Department is preparing to approve the evacuation of some American diplomats and their families from the embassy in Ukraine.
The authorization that would allow diplomats, families and non-emergency staff to leave the embassy here in Kiev is a step that does suggest the US believes the risk of a major Russian attack may be getting worse.
Russia is continuing its military build-up around Ukraine. Over 100,000 troops estimated to be massed near the borders. The Kremlin upping the pressure by moving trainloads of troops into neighboring Belarus all week, saying it's for a huge joint exercise, deploying fighter jets there. Despite the unsettling displays of force, Moscow and Belarus both deny they plan to attack Ukraine.
The continued buildup that we see on the borders of Ukraine is all indicative of what you might expect would be needed to invade another country. But we don't know right now whether this is an elaborate bluff or Putin is truly serious about invading Ukraine.
President Biden meeting with his national security team at Camp David Saturday to discuss the situation. Talks last week in Geneva offered some hope Russia will continue diplomacy for now. But the British government overnight making a startling claim that it has intelligence Russia is plotting to install a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine. The British allegations naming several former Ukrainian politicians allegedly recruited for the scheme. The White House saying this type of plotting is deeply concerning, Russia dismissing the claim as provocative nonsense. The US is hurrying more military assistance to Ukraine, a 90-ton shipment arriving this weekend, including ammunition and anti-tank missiles.
The State Department says the drawdown of the embassy is just part of contingency planning. A US official, though, has told us Ukraine's government is unhappy with the message it sends. It has to be said they are much more sceptical that a major Russian attack is likely. Whit?
So many developments, Patrick. Thank you. Let's bring in ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, who'll be hosting This Week later on this morning. Martha, good morning. Always great to have you. Let's start with that escalating tension on the border with Ukraine. More signs pointing towards a possible Russian invasion. What are you learning about how the U.S. could respond here?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the evacuation of some employees, some U.S. embassy employees. That's just smart. No matter what is happening, the U.S. wants to be prepared. So whether that's a signal or not, we don't know. But they don't want to risk anyone being in a bad position over there. As far as an invasion is concerned, the U.S. is deeply concerned. The U.S. is not bluffing about that, for sure. They are deeply concerned. They see that troop build up on the border. But I think what everyone is looking for here is what is the Russians' off-ramp here? What can they get? What can they say? They claim some sort of victory, short of the U.S. saying Ukraine won't be part of NATO. What can the Russians see to make them withdraw those troops? And they're at a real standoff right now for that.
And Martha, while we have you, I do want to turn to another story, the battle over voting rights. Democrats have been unable to pass major legislation on Capitol Hill. But you recently traveled to Texas, where a controversial new law is now in effect. What did you learn talking to voters there, and how is this law influencing other states across the country?
You know, this is the first test in the nation with there are 19 states across the country making voting harder. What we saw in Texas, they are getting ready for a primary election there, and they're having real problems with some of those ballot applications. Hundreds have already been rejected. One of the election officials told us this is the canary in the coal mine for the midterms. Whit.
All right, Martha, thank you. Let's tune into This Week later on this morning. Martha will go one-on-one with Senators Chris Coons and Joni Ernst about the latest U.S.-Russia tensions over Ukraine and President Biden's plans to pivot his strategy with midterm elections approaching. Plus, Dr. Anthony Fauci joins to discuss whether Omicron cases have peaked in the United States.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.